So now that we've covered why I bought the RG557 when I already have a Steam Deck, let's actually talk about the device itself. This is going to be my honest review of the Anbernic RG557 after spending about a week with it. I bought this with my own money, no sponsorships, no early access, and definitely no sugarcoating it. So let's get into it. So you're looking at the MediaTek Dimensity 8300 chip, which is an 8-core CPU using a 4nm process. It's got 12 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM and 256 gigs of UFS 4.0 storage. So it runs Android 14. It supports Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3, and then it has a video output via USB-C. And it has a 5.8 OLED screen that looks honestly really impressive. It also has active cooling, and it has a 5,500 milliamp battery and what Anbernic calls high resolution joysticks. We'll get to those in a minute. Let's start with the build and feel. So I have the white version and it feels smooth. It has a slightly gritty matte finish that feels great in the hands. It's surprisingly lightweight and it feels really sturdy. And the shape, it's ergonomic and it just kind of fits naturally. So buttons and controls. The face buttons feel really solid, soft and quiet with a nice tactile response. The D-pad, I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't think I'd care about the D-pad this much, but it actually feels really good, accurate, and pretty satisfying to use. So the shoulder buttons are clicky and responsive. The triggers are analog, which is great in theory. But really what stood out to me the most is the rumble, and not in a good way. The vibration motor sounds off. It's weird high-pitched buzz, not satisfying low rumble that you would expect in a premium device. It feels more like almost an afterthought feature. So let's talk about the joysticks. They're small, way smaller than I expected, closer to like Nintendo Switch Joy-Con size. And they work technically. You get a full range of motions, and there's some RGB lighting, but they feel out of place on a device that otherwise feels premium. It's like they cheaped out here for whatever reason. The software experience. So this is my first time using a retro Android handheld, and the learning curve was real. Android 14 is nice, but out of the box, the setup feels a little messy. There were a ton of pre-installed apps, and some clearly cracked or sketchy. It felt like bloated or this thing was about to steal your password. And the default front end didn't really work for me. So I ended up loading my own ROMs and installing Emulation Testing desktop before it finally started feeling familiar and fun. So yeah, there's some setup involved. If you're expecting a plug and play system, I don't think this is it. So let's talk about performance. I tested mostly PlayStation 1 and PSP games and some Android games. Everything ran smoothly, no stutters, no frame drops. The experience was solid once I got everything set up. Again, I don't have anything to compare this to outside of the Steam Deck, and that's obviously in a different league. Let's get into battery life. Battery life wasn't bad. I was getting around 5 to 6 hours of gameplay depending on the emulator. And when it's time to charge, the 27 watts fast charging is definitely a big plus. The speakers, they're downward firing, and usually I hate that. These actually weren't too bad. They get loud, but they're still muffled. So I would take front-firing speakers any day, but for what it is, it works. All right, so let's get into my final thoughts with this. So the RG557 is really my first real dive into retro Android handhelds, and honestly, I'm kind of glad I picked this one. It's comfortable, powerful, and once you get past the janky software setup, it's actually pretty fun. It's a fun, personal little device. But, however, it's not perfect. The joysticks feel really cheap, and the vibration motor just sounds cheap. And the software out of the box is not really beginner friendly. Would I recommend it? If you're someone like me, just curious and willing to tinker and look for a retro experience that doesn't really feel like overkill, then yeah, I think it's a solid entry point. It's not a Steam Deck, and it's not trying to be, but it's something different. And different in this case is pretty good. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. See you in the next one. I've really enjoyed making this one.